Hi, my name is Nicole Siemens, and I am applying for the U.S. Ghost Tours of Annapolis, Maryland tour guide position. Mrs. Borden was last seen alive by her stepdaughter, the infamous Lizzie Borden, and their maid, Bridget, at around 9 o'clock in the morning. At the time of Mrs. Borden's death, Lizzie's sister Emma was out of town, and Mr. Borden and her uncle John were in Fall River. Lizzie claimed to have been downstairs ironing handkerchiefs at the time. Mrs. Borden was killed in the room where her uncle John had slept just the night before. This is now the most requested room for overnight stays in the historic Lizzie Borden Axe Murder House and Museum. It's known as the John Morse Room, but is also referred to as the Murder Room. There were no defensive wounds and there were no signs of a struggle, which seems a little strange. There isn't clear evidence as to whether she was facing her attacker and didn't or couldn't fight back, or whether she was standing up or even if she was kneeling. The only evidence we have is of where the wounds were. One wound struck just above her ear on the left-hand side of her face. One wound was between her shoulder blades that was 4 inches deep. And the remaining 17 blows were to the back of her head and neck for a total of 19 blows. She was eventually found in a pool of her own coagulated blood, along with the stomach contents of her and Mr. Borden, who was also killed later that day. The coroner was able to put the time of death around 9:30 in the morning. This is a full hour and a half before Mr. Borden's murder. The crime scene photo that you can see in the dining room, which also happened to be where the autopsy took place, you can see that Mrs. Borden is lying face down, and you can see the pool of blood around her head. You can also see in the mirror the camera that took the photo. This camera was very important because it was one of the first cameras to take any crime scene photos in the United States. As a matter of fact, the Borden crime scene photos were the first crime scene photos taken at all in the United States, and that's pretty cool.